Hey everybody, this is Joe Gilder from HomeStudioCorner.com. Today we're talking about number 11 in this 12 Home Studio Necessities series, and that is power conditioner. Okay, now before you skip the video, I'm going to go ahead and tell you, this isn't a very exciting topic, but it's important. It's kind of like insurance. Nobody loves talking about life insurance or health insurance, but we all agree that that kind of stuff is important. And I think a power conditioner is kind of like an insurance policy for your equipment. Now, if you're not sure what a power conditioner is, head over to someplace like sweetwater.com and just do a search for power conditioners. Two of the big brands are Monster Power and Furman, but there's lots of others. This right here, I don't know if you can see this. This Furman is the power conditioner that I've had for years. And it's a single rack mount unit. There's nothing much to look at on the front. On the back, it has several outlets. Now, why would you need a power conditioner? Why not just a little plastic surge protector? That's a good question. There's a couple things. Surge protectors are great, but they're not necessarily all that reliable. For one thing, if a surge comes through, they're basically sacrificial systems, okay? So they've got a couple little pieces inside that if a surge does come through, the piece kind of explodes, and it may or may not stop the surge. Sometimes it doesn't. And also, once it explodes, the piece of gear is done, so you have to buy it again. Okay? So with a $10 surge protector, that's not a big deal, but that's something to keep in mind. Doesn't protect you all that much from protection, okay? Or from a surge. Whereas something like this can handle something like 1,000 joules or a lightning strike, I don't know what it is, but it can handle a ton of surges coming through, and it's not a sacrificial system because it actually has stuff in place that'll clamp down on that electricity and that surge and keep it from passing through to your gear without wiping this thing out and having to go buy a new one. Okay, so that's one thing. So surge protection. We all agree that if surges come through the system and get to your gear, that can damage and break your gear. And everything in the studio is powered off of a power outlet. Your computer, your interface, any outboard gear, everything, even your guitar amp. So you want to have something in place to protect it from surges, okay? The other thing to keep in mind with power conditioners is the actual conditioning. And to me, this is the more important part. I'm not too worried about surges, but I am concerned about noise and the quality of my audio. And what a power conditioner does, a good one, will have filtering on the actual electrical outlets. So let me explain how this works. Have you ever been watching TV, especially back in the old days before they were all LED screens, and somebody in the other room turns on a vacuum cleaner? What have you noticed? The actual TV image gets fuzzy sometimes, especially if you grew up in an old house like I did. So the vacuum turns on the other end of the house and the TV gets fuzzy until the vacuum turns off. That's because there is noise that vacuum is creating. It's electrical, the motor itself, and that noise is getting transmitted down the power line and goes to anything else that's connected to that power source. So anything else in the house is susceptible to that noise. Now, it's not a big issue when you're vacuuming or watching TV, but when you're in the studio, that noise can translate into actual noise in your recordings, and that's generally not a good thing. We have enough issues dealing with screaming kids in the other room and air conditioner noise. We don't want additional electrical noise getting into our system. So a power conditioner will have filtering on each of the outputs that filters out any of that noise from coming in and going down the power cable to your audio interface or to your computer. Okay? The other thing that it does is it keeps the different pieces of gear from sending noise to each other. Now, a computer will have a certain amount of electrical noise that it sends down the line, so will an audio interface, so will a preamp. And it's generally different frequencies and different types of noise. So on this Furman, for example, on the back, there's outlets for analog gear and there's outlets for digital gear. And those outlets are separate from each other, so there's filters in place to keep the digital noise from transferring over to the analog equipment and vice versa. So the idea here is it's going to protect your gear from surges, and it's also going to filter out unwanted noise from coming through the power lines getting into your system. Because everything, especially in an analog piece of gear, runs off of the electrical power that it's drawing from the outlet. So if it's clean power, you're in good shape. If it's dirty power, you're going to have a noisier recording. And if you think about one recording being noisy, add that up over 20 tracks, that's a lot of noise. Final thing I want to point out, a power conditioner is different from a voltage regulator. A voltage regulator will actually take the incoming signal and output a steady 115, 120 volts. That's not what this does. You can get a voltage regulator. They're great, but they're expensive. I've never had one, maybe one day. But for now, you at least need to drop 80 to 150 bucks maybe on a good power conditioner. It's not going to be a fun purchase, but think of it as an insurance policy that's going to protect your gear for years to come.